Welcome to this brief presentation on closing the communication loop, a practical guide for communication at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Whether you were just hired or are looking for a refresher on communicating effectively, I am so glad that you are here today. Communicating effectively is so important, and today we will be looking at some tools that will help you develop your communication skills. At NOAA, we communicate with various audiences, and it is important to make sure that we are communicating through the correct channels. It is also important to ensure that we are following through on all communication to make sure that nothing gets lost. At the end of this presentation, you will find a report that was presented to Congress. This is a report we are required to create for Congress every year, showing the pay scales of our employees. We will be considering some of the communications necessary to compile a report of this nature as we complete this training today. So what is the communication loop? There are three participants in the communication loop. The sender. They encode the message and send it via their selected channel. Let's examine a possible scenario. You need to reach out to a colleague as you work to prepare a report for Congress. You are trying to determine how many NOAA employees are in each pay scale, so you email a colleague in HR asking for this information. The receiver. They decode the message and respond to the sender. As the receiver in HR, they will look at the request from the sender and figure out what they are asking for. In this case, they need to know how many employees are in each pay scale. They will locate this information and email it back to you. The sender. The sender looks at the response they have gotten and ensures that their message was clearly understood. They may also become the receiver if new information is communicated in the response. You will make sure that the information you received back is what you asked for. In this case, the pay scale information. It's important to read it carefully and make sure you understand what is being shared with you. The first thing the sender should consider is who their audience is. At NOAA, there will be three main audiences that you may be communicating with: colleagues within the agency, colleagues outside of your agency, we communicate a lot with Congress, and the general public. Each group requires a different type of communication, so it is essential to figure this part out first. For interagency colleagues, you will generally want to use an email, but occasionally a memo may be a better option if you are trying to communicate with a large group of people. Memos are always accessible, so they can be useful if people may need to access this information more than once, as well as if people outside of the original audience may need the information at a later date. Outside agency colleagues, mostly Congress, will always be communicated with in the form of an email, and it may also include written reports. Civilians is the final group, and the communication will also be done mostly by email, but can also be done through information published on the website or a press release. These are separate types of communication that will be covered in a different training. Next, consider what message you are trying to communicate. This will impact how you decide to communicate in the next step. Are you asking for help or information, maybe to an interoffice colleague? Are you responding to a task that was assigned to you by Congress or an interoffice colleague? Are you informing someone about something? This can be to Congress, civilians, or interoffice colleagues. Then you want to consider what channel is correct for your audience and intent. At NOAA, the initial channel is almost exclusively written communication in the form of an email or memo. As a general rule, you want to communicate in writing. This is a way to keep records of everything you say. This is helpful for a number of reasons. It keeps track of everything you say so it can be referred back to later. It also keeps an accurate record of what you said if someone tries to change your message later. Now that you have determined who you are writing to, what you are telling them, and how you are communicating with them, you can compose your message and send it to the receiver. The main task of the receiver is to decode the message they receive. As the receiver, you will need to read it and analyze it to determine what is being said and what actions you need to take. Ask yourself, what is being said with this message? Are you being asked to act? If so, do you have all of the necessary information to act? Respond to the sender. Offer feedback about your understanding of the message and ask any clarifying questions that you need to. You can also convey additional new information to the sender. This effectively turns you into the sender and starts a new communication loop. Referring back to our earlier example, maybe the HR representative needs additional information to fulfill the request for pay scale information. Then you send your response. This step is essential to the communication loop. If the receiver does not respond, the sender has no idea if their message was received and understood. If the receiver acts on the information in the message without ensuring they understood, they may find themselves doing something completely different than what the sender wanted, and now they have wasted their time and potentially the time of others. You need to examine the feedback you got from the receiver and make sure your message was clear. If not, you need to take steps to clarify your meaning. Consider why your message was not clear. Were there language barriers? Sometimes you may be working with people in other countries or who just don't speak English as well. If they don't speak English or only have a minimal level of understanding, it is advisable to ask someone who does speak that language for help communicating. If that is not possible, you can use online translator tools, but it is important to note that these are not always accurate and should be a last resort. It may also be helpful to be familiar with cultural differences. Were there knowledge gaps? If you are asking someone who is new to the organization a complex question, they may not understand what you are saying. At NOAA, we utilize a lot of acronyms, and it may take time for people to learn them. It is always acceptable to spell out acronyms. When communicating with someone who is not understanding you, it is important to be patient and willing to help them learn. Is there a difference in perception of the topic? Some issues may not be black and white, and it is important to be understanding of different opinions and perceptions. Avoid using any derogatory language and instead seek mutual agreement. Whatever the issue, it is imperative that you pinpoint the problem so that you can correct it. Make sure you analyze the response carefully. Consider if you have become the receiver in the communication loop. Were you asked questions that need a response? Was new information conveyed that you now need to confirm your understanding of to the sender? If you have become the receiver, you need to follow the same steps on the receiver slide. Decode and respond. These are some helpful tips to ensure clear and effective communication. Ask a lot of questions. It is perfectly acceptable and even encouraged to ask someone to repeat back to you what they understood you to say. This ensures you are both working with the same message. Stick to the facts and avoid adding your personal opinion unless you are specifically asked for it. It is important to note that the loop can and usually will continue for several cycles. Make sure you continue to follow through until the issue is solved. Here is where you will find the previously referenced report to Congress. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions about the material we covered today, feel free to reach out via email.